Welcome, welcome everybody. I was saying, as you can see, there is a recording in progress because we are collecting these episodes of the Summer of Love so that who cannot make it for the live event can catch up on our discussions, and also we are creating a little archive. As we have to be online, let's take advantage of it. Today is our last episode before the summer break. Then we'll have a final one on post-human eros with Dominic Petman, the 16th of September. But let's focus on the present. Thank you very much, Shuaishuai Wang from the University of Amsterdam and Adrienne Evans. We are neighbors. Adrienne is from Coventry University. And today we are talking about sexy algorithms and post-digital intimacy. So we hope to kind of really trying to understand what algorithms have to do with it and how the digital affordances are producing and reproducing cultures of intimacies, and we'll focus on aspects related to gender and sexuality. Now, for me, this is a very important session because it is the last academic thing that I do before I'm going on leave for the next 4 weeks and more. And also, it is a very important episode of the Summer of Love because I don't know about love, but definitely I am in a place where it's summer. So I'm doing this with my wet hair and a nice summery dress, which is an achievement after a rainy British summer of love. So I hope you all have some summer inside. The summer is magic after all. And let me proceed to introduce you to our guests today a bit more in depth. So Adrienne is a reader for media in the creative because I am an assistant professor in media and creative industries, when I read media, then I say creative. It's a bit of an automatic thing. But in fact, Adrienne is a reader for media in the Center for Postdigital Cultures at Coventry University. And her research focuses on accounts of intimacy in the context of a post-feminist sensibility. And in her work, she explores ways in which gender organizes a personal, social, intimate and cultural relationships, as well as their manifestations in media culture. She has published extensively on these topics and is author of, amongst others, Technologies of Sexiness, Oxford University Press, and Post-Feminism and Health, Routledge. She leads the AHRC Network Post-Digital Intimacies, which I strongly recommend, if you haven't done so, to have a look. It's a great network of people and they are organizing super interesting events. So if you are into the Summer of Love, you are definitely also into the Post-Digital Intimacies network. And also the network public-private. So for more information, yes, indeed, have a look, postdigitalintimacies.net. And perhaps then, Adrienne, if you want to say something about this network and your activities, feel free. And then Shuaishuai Wang is a lecturer in new media and digital culture at the Department of Media Studies, the University of Amsterdam. And I very much like the acronym of the University of Amsterdam because it's UVA, uva, which in Italian means grapes. So it's very, it is not only one of the best universities in the world for media, but also the one with the best acronyms. And these days, it's an important record. And his research interests include platform studies, critical data and algorithm studies, and queer media. He's the principal investigator of the project, The Algorithm Configurations of Sexuality, which was funded by Global Digital Cultures, the research priority area at the University of Amsterdam. And this work has been published in journals such as Information, Communication and Society, Media Culture and Society, Feminist Media Studies, and Sexuality. So you can see by yourself how we really are about to have a very interesting conversation with some people whose research interests and experiences right up our alley in the Summer of Love. So without further ado, oh yes, some of you may already know, the format of the event is that we have our guest, Adrienne Shuaishuai, presenting, and then we try to have a good half an hour, even a bit more, for a debate, and every participants will be made into a panelist, so to speak. So we take advantage of the affordances, we change the affordances in order for us to recreate as much as possible the impression of being together and just discussing in a room. So we are here to talk, we are here to debate, and to think together. So Adrienne, I would say the floor is yours, and then so here we go. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Carolina. I'm very jealous of your summery summer. Right, let me just share this. Okay, so for a number of years, the mobile phone company 3 have run a viral marketing campaign for their Feel at Home service, which allows people with 3 to use their mobile phones abroad at no extra cost. And I'll just quickly play the advert for this now. Oh.
Hello. I'd like to take this moment to sincerely apologise on behalf of 3. Our customers' recent actions overseas rest entirely on our shoulders. We're sorry. We thought allowing customers to use their phones in 16 destinations worldwide like they would at home was a good thing. No extra cost for calling and texting back home, no extra cost for data. But we failed to consider the consequences. The holiday spam. We're sorry. Sorry for all the sunsets, the fancy cocktails, for plane wing after plane wing after plane wing. Sorry for the mini monuments, the beach feet, the street food, the hashtag no filters, the hot dog legs. We deeply regret the frustration this has caused, and we urge all 3 customers, when abroad, please brag responsibly. Thank you.
So the campaign has taken the form of guerrilla advertising. 3 have used billboard adverts and letters in national newspapers to variously apologise for sunsets, hot dog legs and beach feet. A number of beaches were declared no bragging zones, and their campaign included the launch of a mock website, the Holiday Spam Crisis Centre, that monitored threat levels of holiday spam. The hashtag holiday spam was central to the campaign, with the success of the campaign often being measured by the continued use of holiday spam across platforms like Twitter and Instagram. However, another part of the success of the campaign was how 3 tied it to various forms of workplace contexts. The corporate responsibility style of the campaign interacted with the use of the word spam to create workplace associations, with spam typically being something unwanted that most people experience through work email. Billboard locations were also commuter-based. They appeared, for example, in many tube stations throughout London, thus appearing to apologise to those who were still at work and suffering from their colleagues' holiday spam. So I'm starting this talk with 3 because their holiday spam campaign fits nicely with some of the themes I'm going to discuss. So firstly, it demonstrates the blending of the public and the private, and the normalisation of what would have once been private and personal into the public realm, where historically holiday spam would have included images that would have largely been for a person's own consumption, or at least a few close friends and family. Secondly, the centrality and pervasiveness of the mobile phone and its capacities for visualising desires and intimacies and sharing these widely with strangers. And finally, is something that's shaped by urban space and experiences that appear on the surface to be quite mundane, for example, the receiving of spam or the drudgery of the daily commute to work. So in this talk, I'm going to talk through some of the issues in relation to these issues, some of these issues in relation to Tube Crush, a website which allows straight women and gay men to post and comment on attractive men on the London Underground. So the starting point for this project was the deep contradiction at the centre of modern urban life and contemporary culture, with the city as both an intensely alienating space and a truly sociable one. So in a traditional Marxist view, the alienation of the city emerges because we're estranged from modes of production. And this in turn makes our inner worlds less meaningful. In losing ourselves in this way, we also lose our ability to connect to others. However, we could suggest that in the post-industrial or post-digital city, several things have changed that make our connections to space much more intimate. We've had the blurring of the public and private, where private lives are now played out for public consumption, evident in the holiday spam example that I've just talked through. And alongside this, the post-industrial city is entangled in the service sector, and so the need to produce the happy customer and service with a smile. For example, Nageshi has explored smiling in the post-Fordist affective economy, with his example being the smile scan used by customer-facing service staff on the Japanese railway system to rate the smiles at the beginning of the workday. This too is connected with what is often seen as a broader feminization of the workforce, which again loops back into the blurring of public and private, where the masculine was once associated with public life and the feminine with privacy in the home. So public transport in big urban cities seems to capture many of these concerns, in that public transport should be at odds with anything intimate. It is public, it's managed by local authorities, so Transport for London, for example, and is often the way that many of us move from our private lives of the home into the public life of the workplace. But public transport also creates a form of intimacy, especially through proximity. We're usually crammed in with other people, or at least we were pre-COVID. And in contrast to other parts of public life, there's often physical touch, for example, when the train lurches or given the closeness of the seats. In London, for example, the actual organisation of these spaces couldn't be more intimate. The tube carriage of the London Underground and quite a lot of other metro and subway systems also have quite a unique feature which makes them very different from trains, cars, planes, and so on, in that they're possibly the only form of public transport where we end up directly facing strangers. So we're physically seated in the space in a way that means we're looking directly into the faces of other people. So in this project, we refer to this as the public but intimate, intimate but anonymous, or what Fuji is referred to again in the context of the Japanese railway system as the intimate alienation of public transport. In recent years, we've also seen a growing recognition of public transport as a gendered space. This recognition often intersects with digital feminist activism, which shows in different ways how sexism and misogyny are everyday, mundane experiences, happening, for example, in public spaces. Movements like Everyday Sexism and Holla Back have regularly demonstrated the prevalence of street harassment, and a number of stories shared through these movements takes place while physically located on the bus, the train, the tube, and so on. The visibility of terms like manspreading has also highlighted the gendered nature of public transport. So one thing here that will become useful for the rest of my discussion is to note that a lot of this protest has been based on the sneaky picture of men taking up too much space. The result has been bans on manspreading in Madrid and New York, for example, defining it as an antisociable behaviour. In another example, in 2014 in the UK, the Facebook group Women Who Eat on the Tube, quite literally unsolicited images of women eating on the tube, caused a huge amount of controversy, especially when its creator went onto the BBC radio to say that these pictures were similar to wildlife photography. This prompted Women Who Eat Wherever the Fuck They Want, a protest picnic that took place on the tube where feminists prepared food for their journey. Taken together, these issues make public transport an important space to explore intimacy, digitality, gender, and the public-private divide. So we were interested in the protest in that it highlights the gendering of public transport, but we were also interested in how desire works in these spaces in the context of an intimate alienation. The project was particularly interested in how public transport as a public but intimate space moves desire in particular directions, and how these desires once again become public through digital media. So our space for this project was Tube Crush. Tube Crush is a London-based social media company. It's multi-platform, so it exists on Facebook, Twitter, and its own website, tubecrush.net. So Tube Crush exists to allow its users to take unsolicited photographs of attractive men on the London Underground. Or in their own words, this website was set up to pay homage to the homies on our infamous transportation infrastructure. Here you can view pages of Tube Crush guys going about their daily lives, often not knowing the joy that they're bringing to their fellow passenger admirers. The idea is that if we spot some guy candy, we can use our mobile phone to sneakily take a photograph of that person and share that image with others. Once the image has been taken, it's then emailed to Tube Crush, who apply a number of criteria. For example, it has to be on the London Underground, the person must appear to be over the age of 18, the photograph must be of good quality, and it must be unsolicited. Again, as Tube Crush state, we won't use any photographs that look like it's a setup, so don't cheekily try and get your friends on here, boys and girls. If the image fits the guidelines, it will then be posted onto the Tube Crush site along with the date, the tube line, and a tongue-in-cheek caption, which fits the company's ethos of celebrating attractiveness. So here, for example, we just can't get enough of this sexy guy's tattoos on his thighs. So yummy that if he were a KFC bucket, we'd eat them up, bone and all. There are options to share, rate and comment. And the other function of Tube Crush, which is really useful, is the tag cloud, which gives a sense of the classifying language being used by Tube Crush. So here we have typical descriptions, so things like cute, fit, sophisticated, but also hints at what Tube Crush brings together. So the tag cloud includes gay slang like twink and bear, and the prominence of particular lines. So for example, the Northern Line, which runs through London Soho, as well as including places like Camden and Shoreditch, so those young, urban, cosmopolitan spaces of the city. So I'd already spent quite a few years with Tube Crush since 2014, before we got funding from the British Academy to kind of say we were actually kind of properly doing something. This in itself has shaped the project, where data collection has been quite sporadic and fluid. And it's also been part of allowing the complexity to help shape how we did the project. That is, recognising Tube Crush data was never going to be one thing. It's about gender, elements of appearance, desire, attraction, but it's also about the City of London, styled urban masculinity, how previously marginalised groups as straight women and gay men own the image. It's about privacy, it's about consent, it's about the shareability of the image, and so on and so on. So our methodology for understanding Tube Crush has taken shape through treating Tube Crush as part of an assemblage of issues, events, objects and people. And a big part of the project is seeing these relations as connected through movement. This movement creates the context necessary for Tube Crush to exist, or in Birch's words, these various moves make social and material realities. So for example, two of our data points or stations, which I'm going to talk about now briefly, have been the image in the website itself and an interview that we did with the Tube Crush founder, Steve Motion. So in terms of the images, we've tried to understand these as a form of intimate public, defined by Berlant as bringing together a community of consumers. In the case of Tube Crush, this community is brought together through an attraction to community, that is, a community of gay men and straight women. However, rather than find complaint, for example, complaints against homophobia, heterosexism, sexism, misogyny, the intimate public asks us to embrace normativity. And we've argued in our previous work that this is done through the dominance of particular idealized images of masculinity. For example, there's the suit, which not only reminds us of the location of the tube as the space used by those on the commute, but it is also a body we probably should find complaint in. For example, given the financial industry's role in the current era of austerity. And the second is the gym body, a masculinity that's been worked on, that is strong. And of course, the whole lot of baggage that comes with desiring this body. For example, that feminists have criticised the traditional muscle-bound body in that its strength also represents its possibilities for violence. Facilitating these desires is technology, and especially the technology of the camera phone. And although this seems really obvious, the mobile phone provides us with the capacity to capture that image and share it with others. The camera phone means we can take such images in a way that's unobtrusive. And this is part and parcel of a bigger cultural normalization of photograph taking that the camera phone has enabled, and which Tube Crush founder Steve Motion also referred to in our interview. So Steve talked us through the founding of the website, which came about when one of his female friends admitted to taking a photograph of a guy that she regularly shared the commute with. From this, Steve and a group of friends, including the woman who took the original photograph, came up with Tube Crush. So as part of this narrative, Steve recognises the way the camera phone has enabled Tube Crush's existence. He says, if you think back to the days before we had that technology, if someone brought out like a Polaroid camera and snapped a photo, you'd be like, so what are you doing? We've got telephones in our hands now, and we're used to photographing everything all day. It's like if you said to someone, you know, someone who's 16, oh, somebody took your picture today, how do you feel about that? They'd be like, I have 50 and I've taken 20 pictures of myself. I take pictures of myself 20 times a day. This is also recognised within Tube Crush. For example, Who's Crushing Who? The caption reads, when you glance up from your handset, only to find there's a sexy suit type that got on at the last station. You fumble to open your camera and then he tilts his phone towards you. Tube Crush to the power of 2. And so there's a clear redefining of power here, especially for gay men and straight women, when owning the image, taking the image does something, even though that sense of power is then very quickly shared on the network. In Tube Crush, the fluidity of this power is bolstered by the nature of the image, the taking of such photographs in the space of the tube, and the intertextuality of the hashtagging of desire. The hashtag means that Tube Crush travels across the internet. For example, when this Twitter user states, awkward, some guy's taking pictures of me on the tube. Mate, I can see the reflection behind you. I hope I'm your Tube Crush today. This tweet also makes visible an element of the tube in terms of the window's reflection. Indeed, Tube Crush engages in multiple looks, often, for example, featuring the photographer being caught. This produces an unintentional form of self-representation, a kind of non-selfie. This emerges both physically in the window's reflection and by the very nature of capturing the hot guy on the tube as a statement of, this is what I desire. However, despite Tube Crush's digitality, its usability also makes it an offline platform. Tube Crush blurs the on and the offline. So to return again to Tube Crush's criteria for images, these must appear on the London Underground, and more specifically in the tube carriage, not at the station. And there is no Wi-Fi on the carriages. That Wi-Fi only becomes available when you're on the platform. Therefore, taking sneaky pictures becomes one of the capabilities that's enabled or becomes much more prominent once the Wi-Fi goes, when we can't sort of sit and browse through the internet. This also means Tube Crush enables a break from the busyness of social media, of always being connected, to focus on the desires and attractions of the immediate space. And so finally, back to the geography of that immediate space, the intimacy of the tube carriage. And this obviously fits in with what I was saying earlier about the layout of the tube carriage, in that it's a space where we're directly facing people. However, this geography is more than just the organisation of the space, but also the technology that's in that space, for example, the lighting. Steve, for example, tells me that it's very bright. The difference between the UK and other, actually this is why the photographs come out so well, is that it's very light on the trains. The lighting is very good on the London Underground. While another interviewee who'd been featured on Tube Crush shared a similar sentiment. So this interviewee was also an architect and had a particular interest in the lighting of the London Underground. To him, there were particular lines on the underground system that were romantic because of the tone of the lights, because of how they were lit. So that the aesthetics of the space also become important in the digitization of intimacy, all of which kind of come together in the making of intimacy and in turn digitizing that intimacy in a wider public network. And with that, I will stop and hand over to Shuaishuai. Oh, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adi. And let me say, amazing slides.
Thank you.
Very, very cool presentation. And yeah, I think you made me think of how these, because at the beginning, I was like, okay, what is this? And I think it's very interesting how these two crash as you said, like an assemblage of different things, technologies, public spaces, public transport, etc., kind of create this frame of fantasy, like the frame of the object of desire in that specific setting. So it's quite fascinating how I think perhaps because I'm researching dating apps now and digital love in general, like how digital affordances actually acts as the window of fantasy, as a kind of a prosthetic of our own capacity of desiring and fantasizing. So yeah, thank you very much. Super inspiring. And Shuaishuai, it's we are looking forward to hear about the algorithmic configuration of sexuality, which also incidentally, for what is worth it, I think it's a great way of framing the matter. And so yes, I'm just so looking forward to know what's algorithms have to do with it, really. Because I say algorithm, but I don't understand much about algorithms, so I need to hear from you.
Okay, thank you, Carolina, for the invite and also the previous generous introduction. Before I start my talk, I'd like to say something about Adrienne's fascinating presentation, because this tube crash thing reminds me of some practices we have in China. I remembered when I was in college, I also post some messages to our university's bulletin board system, so BBS back to the days, to find people we have brief encounters in public spaces that we felt attracted to. So it's very common in China as well. So now, even though we no longer use a bulletin board system, this phenomenon has continued on TikTok. We have this Chinese version of TikTok called Douyin. So people would record a video of the people that they are attracted to in the metro, for example, and then they will post the video to TikTok and ask other people to help find these people. So they will. But back to my days, I would provide some brief description of the person I have encountered. But on TikTok now, they just make the video and then ask people to, brothers and sisters, please help me to find this people regardless of sexualities. So that is quite definitely interesting and fascinating. Okay, I'm going to start my presentation, which is titled "The Algorithmic Configurations of Sexuality." Before I continue, I'd like to play some short videos I collected from TikTok, the Chinese version of TikTok. So I'm going to unplug my.
如果我们在一起合法，那咱们就结婚。如果我们在一起合法，那咱们就结婚。如果不合法，那咱们就谈一辈子恋爱。
抖音。
I hope you can recognize the English video. So okay, okay. So homosexuality is censored in China's media scape. But you know, despite this wide censorship practices, we still have a lot of short videos featuring same-sex content, same-sex intimacy on TikTok. So why is that? In my talk, I'm going to discuss how recommendation algorithms play, you know, a significant role to make people's sexual identities recognizable on this virtual in this virtual space. So my talk is not about the poignant stories about how homosexualities are suppressed in China. I'm going to focus on some very you know, delightful contents that I have collected for my research. So same-sex videos on TikTok is quite diverse on the Chinese version of TikTok. I'm going to play you another 2 videos to demonstrate how this diversity is registered in these videos. The video is in Chinese, so I have these video transcripts listed on the right.
我们是什么呀？我们是大母零啊！大母零就该做大母零该做的事情啊！是什么啊？走，给我抓男人！啊！抖音。
So you can see a lot of same-sex videos on TikTok are not that, you know, sad or you know, feel surprised as we, you know, might imagine from the Western media depictions. So they are quite creative, you know, to make their sexualities visible on the platform. Another genre is same-sex couple content on TikTok. So. So the video we just saw is actually from a challenge, you know, initiated by heterosexual creators, but you know, same-sex couples, they also imitated the challenge, because if the challenge is recognized by the algorithmic system, they can easily get trending. So a lot of same-sex creators, they also ride the wave of this challenge and make some same-sex intimate videos to get more visibility. Loki, which is the creator of this video, is also my interviewee. So he is a 26-year-old short video creator on Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, documenting his daily life with same-sex partner with short videos. Loki has accumulated around 141,000 followers and more than 1 million likes on the platform. So I asked Loki, so how did he get visibility on the platform? He mentioned Douyin's recommendation algorithms are scandalously precise. This means that the platform bases its recommendations not only on general cursory metrics such as the male gender, but on much more refined and nuanced subdivisions, including age range and body shape. These subdivisions exist in each category and help pinning down their preferences precisely. So you can see here, none of my interviewees have mentioned sexual identities in traditional languages of gay, lesbian, queer, you know, this kind of sense. They emphasize algorithms very frequently during our talk. This because if a viewer only engages with content created by the same gender, for example, you know, if a male viewer only interacts with content created by the male creator, then the platform would reckon that this person is interested in same-sex content. So in this way, you can see the content creators and the audience are connected through this recommendations system. So this phenomenon not only exists in same-sex content, but some straight creators, they're not gay men. They also ride the wave of recommendation algorithms to make their, to expand their audience reach. So they do not want to only appeal to a female audience. They also want to include some male audience to expand their following base. I'm going to play another 2 videos. These 2 creators are straight, so they have made their sexuality quite forthcoming in their bios on TikTok. But still, they will produce some racy man-on-man actions to appeal to the gay audience. And the gay audience would label this practice as, they have found the secret, the hidden threshold for traffic volume.
抖音，这个舞没有男孩子跳吗？重来。
So it is quite straight creators. They produce this kind of racy man-on-man actions to appeal to a wide audience. Previously, these dancers, they only produce videos, featuring themselves, dancing to some music. But later on, when they found that same-sex interested groups are very large on the platform, they started to produce videos, in collaboration. So in this way, they help to reach a much wider audience. So why recommendation algorithms are so important, are so effective, increasing gay visibility in China, particularly on the platform of Douyin? I'd like to introduce my theoretical framework, which is a book written by John Cheney-Leopold. The book is titled Aware Data. So in this book, John Cheney-Leopold writes that in cyberspace, behavior data speaks for one person instead of the person speaking for him or herself. So whereas data draws from much more than our names and our faces. So it's not only about your profiles on the internet, but a user's mundane data-fied behavior, email, a GPS location, or a visit to sports sites, ESPN. So these data are quite meaningless in and of themselves. It is when this data becomes aggregated and correlated, so tethered together and operationalized, that we as data become worthwhile. So data points in their isolation is not useful for these platforms. So the platform, they gather different data flows to make sense of this data. So what are the engaging patterns? So in this way, VR data becomes a very important aspect to look at how recommendation algorithms identify users' sexual curiosities or their sexual identities. Because my research focuses on TikTok, so I'm going to introduce how TikTok, the platform, collects data from users' activities. On TikTok's website, it reveals that the platform collects data from 3 dimensions. The first is user interactions, the second is video information, and the third is device and account setting. For each dimension, they have different criteria. For example, for user interaction, the platform collects data of users' activities include liking, sharing, commenting, creating activities, and time engaged. So if this viewer watch a video from the beginning to the very end. And for video information, the platform captures data include the video captions, sound, because TikTok is very much a sound-driven platform. So it will the platform would analyze the sounds used in each video and also hashtags. Hashtags are very important on TikTok because hashtags are not only some simple words or phrases. hashtags are important because they are computational language. So if a video use hashtags, it means that this hashtag can be recognized in the algorithmic system. So they can be processed and calculated in the recommendation system. So so not only user generate hashtags on themselves, but also the platform, they hire people called content labeler. So they will also hire people to manually hashtag content. For the company, this process involves two parts. The first is machine learning. So for some very simple videos, for example, a car, some content that contains a shape that can be easily recognized by a machine. They will deploy the machine learning system to hashtag content automatically. But for some content that is very complex, they will use the human labor to manually hashtag content. So combined together, they make hashtags a very effective computational language to formulate recommendation algorithms. And the third is device and account setting. So, but this dimension is not that important because users include both viewers and the creators. They do not express, their device, their account setting, so their language preferences, country setting, this kind of things as their interest. So it's just something very basic to their smartphone setting. So user interactions and video information are very important in this process to formulate recommendation algorithms for user to connect with people that they are interested to. For Chinese gay creators, they invent this phrase called "big data sees through you." So it's quite common. So with this phrase, they do not make reference to traditional sexual languages, include gay, lesbian, queer, this kind of things, or homosexuality, but they play with big data. So they invent this slang to denote their sexual identities. So no straight creators seldom do they use this phrase. So if people see this phrase in the video captions, the viewer can by default connect with think this person as a homosexuality. So this phrase refers to the phenomenon that Douyin, which is TikTok, is able to identify users' sexual curiosities and orientations through gendered connections emerging from watching short videos. Like I said before, so if a male viewer only engage with content created by male, by the same particular gender, then these gendered relations emerge from this engaging activity. Then the platform would label this both the viewer and possibly the creator into the same-sex interested group. So in this way, without making references to traditional sexual identity terms, gay, lesbian, and queer, these sexual minority people can connect with each other, use this big data analytics. In China, particularly on TikTok, big data sees through you has gained potency, featuring men wearing basketball shorts, white socks, and shoes of men displaying their gym trained bodies. So same-sex content is quite diverse on this platform. So not only include same-sex couple, but also individual gay men. They feature their basketball shorts or their white socks and shoes. So this kind of particular and even a little bit fetish preferences can be included into the data system and then be processed by the platform to formulate recommendation algorithms. So the thing is how the platform utilizes algorithms to identify users' sexual curiosities and their sexual preferences. I'm going to introduce two major algorithms that are used by TikTok. The first is A/B testing algorithms. So for A/B testing algorithms, it means the platform continuously recommend a pair of videos. So include a pair of videos to a user to see if these two videos can activate a user engagement. So by user engagement, it means liking, following, or sharing. So if this viewer likes the video, if the viewer share the videos to other social media platforms, and if this viewer follow its creator, or if this viewer watches the video from the beginning to the very end. So even if this viewer did not, click the like button or the share button and even the comment button, as long as this viewer watches the video from the beginning to the end and even browse the comment threshold, all these activities will be registered in the platform. So even though people did nothing on the platform, as long as he or she watches the videos from the beginning to the very end, then this engaging behavior will be registered in the platform, and then the platform would reckon that this person is interested in this video. So if neither A video nor B video is able to activate a user engagement, then the platform would continue to feed B and C and D continuously until a user engagement is activated. So this is a very smart algorithm that is deployed by the platform. The second algorithm that is widely used by TikTok is collaborative filtering. So the platform would categorize user into same group based on some interest tag cluster. So so how collaborative filtering in practice is showed on the platform. I set up a research account. So here in the first screenshot, I follow, so this person was recommended to my research account. So why? Because we have followed four same persons. So in this way, this person follow this four person, and my research account also follow this four person. So the platform think that because my research account and this person follow the same four persons, then we might be interested to each other. So this is called collaborative filtering. And the second is if I follow a person, using my research account. In the second screenshot, you can see when I follow a specific person, then the platform would recommend a list of other creators for me to follow. So labeled as people you may be interested in, because this list of creators and the persons that I have followed are in the same group, according to its algorithmic system. So they are in the same group based on the same interest tag. The third screenshot shows that because my research account follows this specific person and other list of person, they also follow this account. So because we follow the same one person, then the platform would gather us together and suggest that we might be interested to each other because we have followed the same person, the same creator on the platform. So you can see how the platform categorizes users into different groups based on the some interest tag clusters. And in this case, is same sex. So based on this phenomena, I argue that sexual identities articulated by and produced in languages of LGBTQ plus, as well as the global discourse on queer, have been highly politicized and therefore classified as sensitive in China. So seldom do these creators use these languages in their video captions, in their video content. They use the big data analytics to make their sexual identities identifiable in the algorithmic system. So they do not use these languages in their videos. But I'm not saying that they do not use this kind of languages in their daily life, but in public spaces, in public social media platforms, they use this big data system, the terms, the hashtags, to make their sexual identities visible to other people. So so this indicates something new is happening in the Chinese media landscape. The algorithmically configured sexual and erotic classifications are nascent and in constant flux because of the real data feedback loop. Because if a user remain in a very stable pattern of engaging with videos created by the same gender, but when he or she changed that engaging behavior, so at some point he or she suddenly engage with videos created by the opposite gender, then the platform would adjust its recommendation accordingly and recommend a new set of videos to that viewer. So this adjustments based on the real data feedback loop make the sexual identities on the platform very fluid. So they're not fixed, because from time to time maybe they remain stable in terms of their engaging behavior. So they have this very stable pattern of engaging. But if this viewer changes his or her engaging behavior, then the recommendation algorithms will be changed accordingly based on the very latest interactional data. So for these reasons, algorithmic identifications are often misread to be technical and thus free of politics in China. And precisely these qualities help create spaces for data-based sexually diverse cultures, because people think, this is big data analytics, they're only data, they're mechanical, they're computational, they are not related to politics, as they do not use these traditional sexual languages in their videos. So even the internet regulators, they do not think this can be related to politics. So precisely for this reason, digital queer cultures flourishes in China's social media scape. So in a way, these algorithms provide an opportunity for sexually marginalized groups to create their own cultures on the platform with the assistance of algorithms. So algorithms make sexual curiosities and erotic preferences and sexual identifications fluid and elastic, as opposed to fixed signifiers. If you are interested, you can refer to two of my writings. So in this book chapter titled "The Algorithmic Configurations of Sexuality," I provided some theoretical and methodological approaches to study sexualities with algorithms, and how they might lead to a new era that traditional fixed sexual identity terms can be distracted in the algorithmic system. This book will be published in April 2022. And we also have a blog, Big Data Sees Through You, Sexual Identifications in an Age of Algorithmic Recommendation. So if you are interested, you can also check on this blog post, which is under the request of our funding organization, because we have to communicate it to non-specialist audience. So that's my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shuaishuai. And it was interesting for me to follow this last reflection that you proposed about the fact that the algorithmic configuration of sexuality moves away from a stable, fixed, essentialist notion of identity, and it rather encourages, promotes, or produces a much more fluid and uncertainty processes of identification. And now I'm reading now before sleeping. I'm reading this book by Eva Illutz, the last one that she published in 2018, I think, and it's called "The Sociology of Negative Relations: The End of Love." And it is less apocalyptic than the title sounds. But yesterday I was reading exactly this. She makes an argument about this ontological uncertainty. We don't have cultural norms and codes that we share in the ways in which love is regulated, organized, socialized. We do not have shared romantic scripts. And I'm thinking that in a sense, reflecting back on my own research on dating apps, that digital media, dating apps, but not only, we are seeing, provides in a sense some technologies for the organization of love and eros more in general, and definitely provides some codes for processes of identifications and matching, etc., and provides a new language, indeed. But at the same time, there seems to be this fluidity and uncertainty, which is a kind of freedom and a kind of constraints, one might argue philosophically, that seems to kind of reproduce it. So there is a form of regulation and institutionalization, if you like, of love and courtship and eros, but these, it is a sort of, I don't know, regulated uncertainties in a sense. I mean, I'm just offering you my wild thoughts here to break the ice, but I think it was very interesting. Perhaps, Adrienne, do you want to say something?
I was just what you were saying. Then remind there was a period of time where OkCupid, they got in big trouble for it, but they started messing with the algorithm, and they started hooking people up who weren't compatible by their kind of, you know, their workings out of it. They got in big trouble for it in terms of ethics, but I think that also, and there were glitches in the messing with the algorithm as well, because some people who weren't apparently compatible ended up in a relationship and perfectly kind of, you know, whatever happiness is. So yeah, I think it's interesting that these algorithms also sometimes miss their mark. They don't, you know, we've all had the moment where we've been recommended a book, or I remember a few years ago I was writing something on pro-anorexia communities and pregnancy at the same time, and I had this really weird moment with my own kind of the relationship with my own computer, where my own computer was telling me how to diet and how to be pregnant at the same time. So I think the way those algorithms sometimes get it wrong is also really interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Because in the algorithmic scholarship, we always argue that algorithms do not always have to be right. So the bottom line is they just need to be not wrong. So algorithms are not hard science. So they make mistakes. So that's why, you know, as humanities and social scientists, we can study algorithms. Otherwise, this field will be monopolized by computer scientists, because algorithms make mistakes and they're not neutral, because they're designed for the economic convenience. All the platform companies, they design algorithms for profit gain. So they're not for, you know, to create an equal society or whatsoever. So that's why we always critique algorithms and their impact on society. So, you know, sometimes they have this glitch, like you mentioned that on dating apps, algorithms sometimes make a wrong recommendation and recommend that people to a user that this user is not interested to. That happens. So but still, you can see why we can, deconstruct algorithms, you know, from a very neutral device, from a hard science, as claimed by their designers. You know, these computer scientists, these programmers always, promote their algorithms to be neutral, scientific, and politics free. So they're not true. So that's why, you know, we can jump in here to look at how these algorithms configure different societies, different, in my case, different sexual identities. So I'm not saying that, you know, these algorithmic identities are replacing traditional sexual languages. It is not true. You know, during my interviews, all my respondents, they use this gay, lesbian, queer, in their daily conversations, because it is convenient for them to denote their sexual identities. But when they move to the online world, when certain terms, gay, lesbian, queer, these kind of terms are censored, so they, come up with new solutions. They invent, this, the kind of they are complicit with data analytics. So sometimes, in Western scholarship, we always criticize algorithms. They are a threat to our democracy, a threat to our journalistic independence, a threat to many things. But in China, I see the other way around. People actually, tap into the power of algorithms to make their sexual identities visible, to make their culture visible on a mainstream platform. So that is fascinating, I think. To offer a different way of analyzing algorithms.
And there is something incredible about that. Big data sees through you. That is an amazing line.
Yes. And you can see not only gay creators, not only gay and lesbian creators use that phrase, but also straight creators. So in a way, the boundary between, gay and lesbian sexualities and straight sexualities, they become, the boundary is becoming increasingly collapsed. So you can see there, in Chinese society, I can say that we have a lot of homophobic stuff going on. But on this platform, on TikTok, you can see, for the sake of visibility, for the sake of enlarging their following base, they want to appeal to the gay audience, even the straight male creators. They want to make their videos reach to the gay audience. I think that is quite unexpected for me, because I think this person might be homophobic and they do not want anything to do with gay men, right? But on the contrary, so not only one or two creators, they ride the wave of this queer baiting, but a lot of straight creators, they play this, they create this racy man-on-man actions. They're straight, so they will denote that their sexualities are straight in their bios, but still it does not hinder them from producing this kind of videos, to reach a large audience. And I think that somehow they make this media environment quite friendly, for both queer men, queer women, and straight men, straight women. So yeah, that is my research and observation so far. But still,
thank you very much.
Working on it.
Thank you very much. I would invite our audience, our attendees, to write their questions in the chat or in the Q&A box. And if I would also actually get the chance to thank Nate. Nate is the director of the Center for Digital Inquiry at Warwick, that is our platform. And I think that now is the moment in which Nate is sort of turning, in a sense, our attendees into panelists, so that if you want to speak, just please raise your hand or break in, and you're really welcome to turn on your camera if you want, and keep us company in this half an hour that we have left to be together today. I have a question written in the chat by Shelley. Shelley, in case you want to talk through it, then please feel free to raise your hand. But in the meantime, I'm just going to read it. So Shelley Park, I think it's a question for both of you, wondering what the differences and similarities are between algorithmic identities and non-digitized ways of announcing one's gender and sexuality, also behavioral. Seems perhaps to be a 21st century example or direction of the performativity of gender. So that's quite a good question. And Adi, do you want to take it perhaps?
I'm wondering if Shelley could maybe talk it through a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that Shelley is here in what is now a seminar. So Shelley, if you want to come in, please do feel free to turn on your camera and mic and tell us more about your question.
I mean, I guess my gut feeling, coming from a kind of a research centre that's focused very much on the post-digital, is that those two things, that kind of algorithmic identities or digital identities and non-digitized ways are and have for a long time always interacted with each other. I mean, there's a long history of digital technology interacting with the LGBTQA+, QAI+ communities that goes before the days of the internet. So I guess that's my first thought, but Shuaishuai might have more in-depth responses to that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to briefly share our project page. Thank you for the question, which is a good question. You can see the full title of my project is From Performativity to Behavior Data, the Algorithmic Configurations of Sexuality on Social Media in China. So yes, we also noticed that in terms of the theorization of gender and sexuality, we may face a data turn, but I'm not saying I'm not going to suggest that algorithmic identities and traditional identities theorized by traditional discourse and languages are completely different, because even for the computational languages, they rely on a reinvention of traditional languages, because traditional languages are not completely new. So I see many overlaps. So they interact, the computational languages and the traditional languages, they interact with each other very intimately. So they are not completely different from one another. So, but with this interaction, computational languages and traditional languages, there are new things emerge from this interaction. That is amazing. So in a way, gender is still performative. So in our daily life, you can see people perform as male and female, and even in my interviews, I ask people so they can recognize a person in a short video as a gay man or not. So I ask them why. So in what way you identify that the people in the video is a gay or not? It's like just the way he or she behaves. So you can see the performativity of gender still at play in short video environment, but this performativity of this gender performativity is interacting with computational languages. So that is quite yeah. So for me, I think this is something new, but not that but do not subvert the previous theorization of gender. So it's like some continuity. It's just
Yeah, one could say that sort of digital technologies for the performance of gender, but I think that the ways in which there is I don't know, perhaps it's the same old question about technologies and culture and the way they interact. And I think that contemporary sexuality and contemporary eras is quite a good place in which to look at these episodes, also because there is kind of a centrality of the body there. But these are also like these embodied technologies in the performance of gender, in a sense. So Shelley says, thank you. And yes, okay, sorry, I thought there was a following up comments. Do we have other questions or comments or observations? But also, let me thank James Cummings from Newcastle University, because I very much appreciate when people turn off their camera, because I feel like I've been, in the last year and a half, I've been saying to students and colleagues, turn on your camera, or I heard turn on your camera, and I totally get why we don't turn on your camera, but for those who do, it's always nice when you are on this side and you can't turn off for some reasons because you are the host. So thank you. Oh, and Nate, did I make you feel guilty so that you turn on your camera now?
Yes, yes, you did. You made me feel very guilty. I had to, yeah, you know, get dressed, do my hair, that kind of thing. I've got a question, if that's cool. So thanks for both the presentations. I've got questions for both of the speakers, but I think the one that I wanted to ask kind of primarily was for Shuaishuai, because your research kind of enters territory that I find myself kind of dealing with, and in particular around the use of research profiles to do, which is, you know, in my opinion, a kind of ethical gray zone at the moment, because of course you're almost certainly breaching terms of service, but then, you know, there are broader, you know, ethical frameworks around research that that, you know, may place you in contradiction to some of those terms of service and may justify research in some situations, but also prevent it in others. But my question is kind of stems from that. But I mean, what's really interesting about these these kind of, you know, these practices, let me say, is, you know, it's a kind of, you know, I don't want to say it's like a hiding in the spotlight, but it's a kind of, you know, these are really strategic forms of visibility, right? And they're forms of visibility that are being mobilized, you know, around particular objects, right? As you say, in terms of recommendation and so on. But they're kind of, they're like, you know, particular attachments within the social graph, right? That are performing different kinds of queer identities. And you know, what my question to you is kind of what's at stake in your research in making them visible in this way, right? Like they follow their own logics of visibility, which is both being as visible as possible while also being not so visible in some ways. But your research is about making some of those modes of visibility explicit, right? Rendering them a kind of researchable thing. And I'm just interested, like, what's your larger project and how do you relate, or how do you think about your own role in, you know, like making these practices and these identities visible in a different context? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nate, for the question. Yeah, you know, so, I encountered, I was being asked this question before in another conference. So I remember that at that time I said, I think I'm doing something good because, you know, for academic research, we can also increase gay visibility because, you know, through publication and so on. In terms of ethics, so I do interviews. I also use this research account because in my in that book chapter, I conceptualized a new research method for, you know, for repurposing recommendation algorithms for data sampling, or what I call digital snowball sampling, because we always argue algorithms are biased and prejudiced because they create this filter bubble, right? Only recommend content that is interested to a person. So over time, a filter bubble is created, and that person's political opinion may be polarized because of this information filter bubble. But in my case, because my research focuses on the marginalized groups, I think we can, you know, repurpose this bias into data sampling, because we want to study exactly that kind of content. So we cannot. It's very difficult for researchers to collect that data, you know, in context where homosexuality is censored. So that's why we can, you know, tap into the power, harness the power of the bias of recommendation algorithms, you know, turn something bad into something not good, into something useful, if not good. So I conceptualized this digital snowball sampling method. So repurpose the bias, the prejudice of recommendation algorithms into data sampling. So In this way, I think a lot of marginalized groups, not only LGBTQ, but also migrants, also racial minorities. I don't know if you remember that at the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement on TikTok, the protest videos are hidden, from users' newsfeed, because TikTok wants to isolate itself from politics. Then it faces a lot of criticism. But in my research experience, when I repurpose this bias, hidden protest political videos into data sample, it turns out to be rather productive. I gathered a lot of protest videos on the subject of Black Lives Matter movement. So you can see this digital snowball sample is particularly useful for studying marginalized groups, marginalized issues, marginalized subjects. But for mainstream subjects, we might need to use another method. But in my experience, bias and prejudice are not necessarily an evil thing. We can repurpose it. We can make it work for us, for our own research agenda. So yeah, that's that is my response to the question.
Thank you, Shuaishuai. And also I want to apologize. Of course, I am in my family house, so that's my grandfather and mother and dogs and everybody in the background. I don't have a studio, but I don't like the fake background. So this is where I am now. My grandfather is not completely aware of smart working yet. So he was talking to me. Anyways, so thank you for the question, Nate and Shuaishuai. Adi, do you want to say something about this?
Only in terms, in terms of the Tube Crush project itself, obviously there's the one of the big kind of discussions around it is around the ethics of the practice itself. So that, is it ethical to and it kind of in the public discourse around Tube Crush kind of engages with that reverse sexism thing of, if this practice was men taking pictures of women, it would be horrendous and blah blah blah, which myself and my colleague Sarah Riley have kind of argued against in terms of, it completely ignores the history of the image and how the image of women has been used historically versus how the image of men has been used historically. The only other thing I was thinking in terms of the ethics, to plug the Postdigital Intimacies research network, we had an event last week where Kat Tindenberg, who's also part of the Association of Internet Researchers, she talked about an ethical framework for this kind of profiling using social media profiles, and she talked about it in terms of care, context and critique, and it was a wonderful talk. It will be, I'm doing the plug now, it will be available on the Postdigital Intimacies Network webpage within the next week as well. So if anybody was interested in hearing her talk about how she's worked through that a few times, then yeah, check that out.
Yeah, we will. So I would encourage people to just offer comments or questions, observations. James, yes, I was waiting for you to raise your hand.
Thank you. I have a question for both Adi and Shuaishuai. It was I'm trying to think how to frame it as a useful question. I guess about the politics of both of the platforms that you're looking at. Because looking at the Tube Crush, it seems that there's a potential for a politics there of women, straight women and gay men, objectifying and fetishizing straight men on the tube. But then having a quick look at the website itself just now, there is a glorification of muscular, generally largely white straight men, and very middle class looking straight men as well. And then the website itself actually doesn't look very clear about what its politics is, what it's actually trying to do. And I guess similar question for Shuaishuai as well is there any critical political potential in this kind of destabilization of sexual categories that you're looking at, or I mean, is it just queer baiting? And I guess on both platforms, is it just a kind of an appropriation of sexuality in service of digital capitalism?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, really interesting question in terms of tube question. That was the kind of will we hit that to a point, because yeah, it kind of uses humor to get out of the politics, which is really interesting. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That it is muscly. It is either men in suits or muscly men, and very white men as well. It's predominantly white men who are being photographed as the objects of desire, which I think is really important, because if we're interested in thinking about what's changed or what's new, actually, if you're looking at something like Tube Crush, there's nothing new there. It's very similar to all the kind of representations that we've seen before. So this kind of is this, and again, the first question kind of made me think about it in terms of that really weird blurring of, and as digital media scholars, you always kind of in part saying this thing is new, but also in part saying it really isn't. It was one of the reasons why we turned to the kind of theoretical frameworks of Laurent Ballant, because I think that idea of complaint turned into normativity becomes really poignant. It becomes really useful to start thinking through that kind of something that looks like on the surface it could have so much potential, but then becomes something very normative. So that kind of led us down that theoretical path, which, yeah, to me really helps make sense of a lot of the context that we're in at the moment.
Thank you, Adi. Shuaishuai, do you want to comment on James' question?
Thank you, James, for the question. Yeah, in terms of politics, it concerns me as well, because like I said before, algorithms are, economic convenience for these platform companies. They produce these algorithms for monetization. Even, the straight men, they produce videos that may appeal to same-sex audience. They also want to, get more visibility, because more visibility means more money, right? So I'm also, uncertain about, how, if this, algorithmic visibility is a good thing or bad thing for Chinese queer communities, because it's really difficult to come to a conclusion now. Because if they do not use this, mechanical technical device to promote their visibility, there are not so many, options available to them. So they have to use all the resources that they can reach. They can, that is politically neutral or politically insensitive to promote their visibility. But from what I have observed, I can see that this algorithmic visibility will definitely lead to normativity, as not only on TikTok but also for YouTube, all the mainstream Western social media platforms. For example, YouTube, they promote more visibility to content that is family friendly, because family friendly content is more easy for the platform to monetize. So you can see, as long as these algorithms are intimately linked to monetization, you can have this conclusion that it definitely produces normativity, in different forms. So I think normative politics. So homonormativity, heteronormativity, all these kind of things will be found on both TikTok and other major mainstream social media platforms.
Thank you. Thank you, Shuaishuai. And yes, I would, we still have a few minutes. So I would encourage if people have comments or questions, or if what we've been talking about kind of resonate with your research, to just say it in whatever format you prefer. And then in the meantime, I would pick on Nate's comment. Nate, you wrote, there's also interesting and challenging question around fostering a unique research persona. What do you mean?
Oh, that was just an old question. I've got a new one now. So
okay, great.
I just thought while there's nobody else speaking, I could fill the blanks. But please consider me the least important contributor if anybody else wants to talk. But just following up on that point around algorithmic identity, because one of the things that I think is pretty interesting, right, is like, okay, so a recommendation system is effectively a kind of cognitive infrastructure, right? It's like it's performing associations and matches and so on in a kind of calculative way, but it's based on user choices as well. So it's a distributed mode of cognition. Now, what's kind of interesting to think about when you talk about a kind of queer identity becoming like more fluid. Of course, it's always fluid, but kind of more fluid, like attached to particular objects, like basketball shorts, become this thing, which I think is, is kind of really interesting. But when you talk about like other TikTok performers who kind of get pulled into this genre, right? Like, because, they hit on a kind of a pattern. It raises really interesting questions around, like, let's say, like agency or kind of agential force. It's like, who's driving the kind of the queer identities that are being produced in TikTok? And of course, it is a distributed accomplishment, like with the recommendation systems and so on. But it raises really interesting questions if you think historically, when you make a choice about, sexual identity or whatever, usually, who's making those decisions and how, is done quite differently than if you're in an algorithmic context. It's like maybe actually, it's the recommendation algorithms, the machine learning algorithms that are identifying the shorts. It's like, who's pulling the drivers of signification that are producing, attachments. I think that to me is like a super interesting thing to think about. Like, are they, because we talk about algorithms being biased. Of course, it's a really simplified way of, because there's no standard. But on the other hand, it may be interesting to talk about like the way that algorithms are kind of producing kind of queer identity. They're queer in culture in these ways that are kind of not quite in anybody's control, right? They're kind of slipping, which I think is kind of really, it's really interesting thing to think about.
Yes, that's actually super interesting, like the algorithms queering culture. Shuaishuai, do you want to, I'm sure you have something to say in this regard, so I'm picking on you.
Thank you, Nate, for the question. I think this question also relates to what Carolina said before about ontology. So when Judith Butler theorized this, her vision of gender, a body is the site for theorizing gender, this kind of things, right? But on the internet, interaction history become the site for theorizing gender, because people. So in a way, although the performance of body still matters on the internet, interaction history becomes more important for theorizing this kind of gender and sexuality. The book I referred before by John Cheney-Lippert, We Are Data. So in that book, he says that interaction history, so the data we contribute to the internet, is not ourselves, not our physical existence, but the traces we leave on the internet become become aggregated as a site for theorizing gender. In my case, because John did not write too much on gender and sexuality. So from this perspective, you can see, the traces we leave on the internet, the content we like, the like button we clicked on, the content we shared, and the time we spend on the internet. The time engagement, is very important metric for social media platform to measure, their data performance. So data is important for these platform companies, for these social media platforms. And why is that important? Because all these platform companies, they rely on virtual investment for expanding their business. So to the end, I would say that monetization, all the urgency of turning a profit drive this process. So in a way, so money is quite important here. So I will look, in my research, I look at different monetization strategies of different involved actors, including users, platform companies. They all treat monetization as the core of their practice. So even for algorithmic identities, monetization is quite important because of this body algorithm and monetization. And also, why, the traces we leave on the internet are important for these platforms, because they rely on these data points to turn a profit. So I'm not saying that, relate to my previous answer, the performance of body and the traditional languages of LGBTQ+, and also the interaction history, they are not, replacing one another, rather they, converge. They have this new convergence on the internet, and this convergence produces new stuff, new identities. So so this new identities is not radically different from the traditional ones, but they have the intricate links to the traditional sexual identities, to the traditional performance of gender, but they also give rise to new forms of performance. So that is my major argument in my different writings. So I'm not that revolutionary to say this is completely different. This is completely new. Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. Adi, do you want to say something? And James, also, if you want to respond to these inputs, just feel free to talk. Really.
I don't think I have anything to add. It just the only thing it just occurred to me that Tube Crushes, and it is body plus maybe algorithm not monetized. So I think there's different assemblages depending on different affordances depending on the platforms as well.
Thank you.
That wasn't very helpful, but yeah.
No, but it's true, because also, I mean, it's the fact that there is a sense in which there is of course, the commodification or mercification, but then I think that the question of what is industrialized, what is commodified, and how and for whom, it's a very important question. And so you see different patterns of what is actually commodified. So for instance, my take on dating apps is that it's not people that are commodified. I don't think that people are made into the product. I think that people are not that important. I think that what is made into a product is the capacity to signal one's status as a dater, so to speak. So I think that that is an important kind of punctualization, yeah, as far as I'm concerned. Let me open the chat. Okay, here we have body plus algorithm plus great tube lighting. That is the assemblage. In the meantime, here it's starting to rain, but kind of badly. So I might have to find shelter inside. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and ideas and your project with me and with us today. It's sort of a storm. There's a storm going on. So summer, let's wrap up until it's summer before it gets into some sort of stormy summer, but love is a storm, isn't it? So perhaps we do want a stormy summer. We do want sudden changes. It was an interesting experience to do this event, like not in my office, but in a garden with all of these other elements.
It looks lovely. It looks really lovely where you are.
It is. Thank you, and thank you, James. I'm happy that that you enjoy. I'm just curious. Are you doing research on these topics?
I am, yeah, a few different, I worked on a UK-based project called Digital Intimacies with Jamie Hakem and Ingrid Young. I spoke to Addy before, like when I was working on that project. And then my own research as well is about, I mean, generally it's about queer cultures in China, but as part of that is about digital technologies in everyday life. And I spoke to Shuaishuai separately as well about that previously as well.
Right. So and of course, Jamie and together with Lixam Chan presented here, Love is a Smartphone event. So we are growing into a big family. So I hope to catch up with all of you soon. And yes, enjoy your Summer of Love.